So what are you thinking about? Seriously, what are you thinking about right now? What has captivated your attention, maybe in the last hour or so, or perhaps more to the point, what do you keep thinking about? Are you a worrier? Are you the kind of person who keeps returning to an idea or a thought over and over? It's not like you're obsessive, but do you notice that you're worrying about something and then you try to talk yourself out of it by saying, I'm just not going to think about that anymore today? Do you just keep returning to it then and thinking about it again and again? Well, it's kind of funny. It's like telling yourself or telling someone else not to think about something. And that makes us think about it all the more. Don't think about elephants. There. You're thinking about elephants, aren't you? And the more you tell yourself not to think about elephants, the more you think about elephants. Even if you haven't been thinking about elephants much, now that I mention elephants to you, not thinking about elephants is impossible. It seems like that's all you can think about. Sometimes the thing we focus on isn't just annoying or distracting. Sometimes it's downright dangerous. One of the terms we use to describe this fascinating phenomena is target fixation. You've probably heard that term before. You've certainly experienced it. Look at something you want to avoid, and you're going to bump right into it. Focus on what you don't want to do in your golf swing, for example, and you're probably going to do it over and over and over and get more frustrated and focus even more. The small airplane that I fly has a wonderful, what we call glass panel. It's made by Garmin. It's like a couple of big iPads on the panel itself. There's lots of information about the flight displayed on the screens, about where I've been, where I've gone, how high I am, everything. Lots of information. As a pilot flying in VFR, I don't want to have my head down fixating on that beautiful panel. Instead, I want to have my eyes outside the cockpit most of the time. But the panel is so captivating. When I ride one of my motorcycles, I can fixate when I'm riding on like a pothole. Oh, I don't want to hit that pothole. And I can stare at that pothole to try to avoid it. And then I end up hitting the pothole. Or I can actually notice the pothole and look past it to where I want to go. And then I'll avoid the pothole. You ever been annoyed by anyone? And that's all you seem like you can think about? Even though there's a lot more to that person, you just fixate on those one or two things that that person does that bothers you. Well, that's target fixation. The solution to target fixation is target fixation. In other words, find another target. It sounds kind of silly, but it works. If you've ever been around a child that cries, a parent will sometimes, a good parent, they'll step in when that child is crying about something, and instead of saying, what does it feel like? Why are you crying? They'll ask diverting kind of questions. My son John and his firstborn son Remy were over at the house the other night, and Remy, who is now 18 months, almost 2 years old, started to cry about something that 2-year-olds cry about. And Jonathan realized he's not actually hurt, so he picked him up and started asking him questions. Did you help me drive the tractor? What was that like? What noise did the tractor make? Solved. He had Remy have a different target, and it solved the crying problem. At least in that instance, doesn't always work. So when faced with a problem, it's much more effective for you and I to focus on creating a compelling solution than on just stopping the behavior that created the problem in the first place. Focus on where you're going rather than on the obstacle that's in your way. Just like riding a motorcycle, notice the pothole, but then focus on where you're going, and you'll miss the pothole every time. As a leader or a manager or a supervisor, you have targets, things that capture your attention. And since leadership isn't everything, but it's the first thing, you've learned that what you focus on matters. What you focus on will eventually become what everyone you lead focuses on. This is the reality of leadership. You can see it everywhere. There are illustrations every time you turn around. If you were to go out into a crowd of people, like inside of a mall or something like that, and stop in the crowd of people and look up, and just look up kind of with a panic look on your face, everyone who saw you do that would also look up. And then people who didn't see you look up but saw someone else look up, they would look up too. We would all start looking up and then start wondering what's going on. If you show up, instead of just looking up at the sky and causing kind of a herd stampede effect there, if you show up and you have a "we can do this" attitude, especially under pressure, then other people will have that too. In fact, most people will. If you show up whining and grumbling and complaining and "this will never work and we're all going to die," well, eventually everyone else will follow that same lead. If you are anxious and focus on that anxiety, petting the fur off of it, eventually everyone you lead and everyone you influence will also become anxious. Anxious leaders create anxious teams. Here's a secret. Nobody likes being anxious. I don't like it. You don't like it. Nobody likes it. It's icky. It's somewhere in between annoying and paralyzing, depending on how intense it is. Well, here's another secret. How you, as a leader, deal with anxiety is how the people you lead will deal with it. If you distract yourself using quick fixes to temporarily rid yourselves of the feelings of anxiety, the people you lead will follow your lead. On the other hand, if you think of anxiety as a symptom rather than as a standalone emotional problem to be eradicated, and if you discover its cause, and if you have the courage to lean in and address it at the root, you will, in fairly short order, find that anxiety is no longer the defining characteristic of your world. As you get to work, the feelings of anxiety will fade into the background. The anxious parent, the anxious supervisor, the anxious leader, they all have a lot in common. Whenever the people that they lead and love are nervous or uncomfortable or anxious themselves, that anxious leader often dives in to relieve their feelings of anxiety. And if you're an anxious leader, other people's anxiety increases your anxiety, and you don't like that at all. So you naturally want to do whatever you can do to relieve their stress and their anxiety right away. But it doesn't last. On the other hand, and by contrast, what I like to call a non-anxious parent or a non-anxious supervisor or leader, when observing the anxiety in the people that they lead, leans in, has the courage to discover and address the cause of that anxiety in their team or their enterprise or in their family. They don't look for quick fixes. They don't focus on feeling better right now. It takes a lot of courage to do that. Doing that can create more anxiety, though, for the moment. So it doesn't seem like the right course of action. And let's get personal. You don't want to. In fact, you can't do that if you are personally riddled with stress and anxiety already. Okay, take a breath. Stay with me on this. This part is very important. Let's zoom out just a little bit. We've progressed on so many levels as a society in Western culture. Our transportation systems, our information systems, our use of energy, our economic systems, our technology that connects us, our technology in healthcare, our communication systems, on and on and on and on. It's so much progress. But we have regressed in our relationships, in our interpersonal and community connections, in our emotional maturity, in our ability to deal with the hard stuff of life. We have regressed when it comes to justice. In The Hard Thing About the Hard Things, Ben Horowitz wrote that the hardest part about being a leader is overcoming our own psychology. I think he was astute in his observation. Overcome your own stress and worry and selfishness and anxiety, or you will replicate it in all those you lead or manage or supervise. Just between you and me, if you were sitting right here, we'd lean in, we'd sip some bourbon together. So just between you and me, we've come to a moment in the history of our society in which many people now think that they should not have to overcome their own psychology, especially if it's hard, especially if life is hard and if it's painful, then it must be just plain bad. I should never have to do the hard things, much less feel the hard stuff of life. I think we may be more anxious as a society today than ever before. And here's the kicker. We're more anxious about being anxious than we are actually anxious. Let me say that again. It's kind of a weird construct. Your mind may have wandered there just for a hot minute off to some other target. So come back and lean in with me here. We're more anxious about being anxious, about thinking about the possibility that we could be anxious, than we are about anxiety itself. Our national ethos has become life, liberty, and the endless pursuit of the absence of even the remotest possibility of anxiety. We don't want to even think about that possibility or the possibility of hard stuff. That makes us anxious. If not that, then we're anxious about being anxious. But we think about anxiety all the time. We think we're fragile. Don't think about elephants. Don't think about elephants. All you can think about is elephants. We're creating a system in which pressure of any sort indicates that something is wrong. I call that a low pressure system. It's the endless pursuit of a pressureless society. And that focuses on getting rid of the elephant of anxiety, more precisely, of anxiety as a feeling or as an emotion. Leaders and followers alike are swimming in this sea. You and I are swimming in this sea. So here's the big idea. Anxious leaders create anxious followers. I get it. No one likes the feelings of anxiety or fear or worry. But rather than address the source of anxiety, anxious leaders focus on the feelings, saying, oh, you shouldn't feel bad, ever, about anything. This focus on eliminating the feelings of anxiety has the perverse effect of creating more anxiety. Is your head spinning yet? Hang on, there's a little bit more. It's sort of like saying, your foot should never itch. Is your foot itching? You deserve to be a foot itch-free person. It's your God-given right. Well, that makes me think, well, I think my foot's itching. It wasn't itching before, but now it is now. Oh no. And now my neck's itching. Oh no, what am I going to do? Then we go on and ask other people, is your foot itching? And then we bunch together in right foot itching groups or left foot itching groups, and we all obsess about our itchy feet, and then we march on Washington because our feet itch, and we demand solutions now. After all, itch-free feet is our right. Then we blame others for our itchy feet. And then they feel anxious. They feel that their position and their power is threatened, and then they quickly succumb to the pressure of our angry over our itchy feet. And they pass a law so that no one should say anything or do anything that might even remotely cause us to think about our itchy feet. It's all over CNN. It's all over the Washington Post. It's in the Wall Street Journal. Whole industries rise up to promote that no one should ever have itchy feet. And they promise a product that'll take care of that. Now all we can do is think about our itchy feet. If the itch stops, we're afraid it might start again. And on we go. But what if itchy feet is normal? What if an itch on your right foot simply means your nerves are working, or your skin cells are regenerating, or your tendons and your muscles are regenerating and they're healthy? What if you just ignored the people who said you deserve to never itch again and just got on with your life? What if your focus was not on feelings, but on reality, on action? What if your focus was not on anxiety, but on doing good work? Have you ever noticed that your itchy feet or your sore knees or your impatience or your anxiety all fade when you just get to work, especially when you lean in to worthy work? When your coworker or your neighbor or your friend needs your help and you just dive in and you lean in and you do good, and you be good, feelings may or may not cooperate. That's what I call a high pressure system. The hard work of adventure is good when in pursuit of something worthy. Low pressure systems, those systems that value comfort over the adventure of accomplishment, pull everyone into a slow death spiral of narcissism and into an endless pursuit of the mirage of calm and bliss to feel good all the time. High pressure systems, on the other hand, dare us to be good and to do good. Let's get real. The focus on quick fixes, on immediate relief of the feelings of anxiety works, but just for a while. But this focus makes addicts of us all. And as with all addictions, whatever we do to mask the feelings now simply stops working later. It's easy at first, but very hard later. The high pressure system, on the other hand, values doing good for others and being good because character is destiny, and it values that over feeling good. It brings about profound growth because it values genuine, lasting transformation over monetary, emotional transactions. The high pressure system values accomplishment over ease, and it's much harder at first, but therein lies the adventure. So what are you thinking? What's your focus? Low pressure. I should never be uncomfortable. I should always feel good. I should never be anxious. I deserve to be comfortable all the time. If I'm uncomfortable and anxious and worried, something's wrong. Since I deserve it, it's not me, or how I think, or how I behave, that's for sure. So it's got to be you. It's got to be them. Start the blame machine. High pressure system, I'm built to do good work. The work of a parent or a friend or an accountant or a builder or a baker or a neighbor or a dispatcher or a medic, an author, a painter, I don't know. But the work is hard. So you've probably figured this out by now, or you wouldn't have stayed with me to the end of this video. You've probably figured out that the antidote to anxiety is not and has never been the pursuit of some elusive, passive inner state of calm. Courage in the face of adversity and in the face of resistance, in the face of challenge and fear, leaning in, courage, that's the antidote to anxiety. So rather than, what are you thinking about? Perhaps a better question is, where are you going? Think about that. Your right foot will probably stop itching if you go for a walk up the hill and help your neighbor get her car started. You'll probably stop thinking about elephants if you think about and act on something bigger. Here's the best part. If you lean in and do the work rather than think about the itchy feet of itchy elephants and worrying about it all the time, and rather than thinking about anxiety and how hard it is, so will all the people that you lead. Leadership isn't everything, but it's the first thing. Get there first. Just saying. Here's to you. Time to get back to your good work.